guys, welcome back. I am here with Rod Burylo, and he is the author of this book, More Awesome Client Events. I was able to go through and read most of this book over the weekend. Great book. What I liked about it so much is, as one of the people at CIR who help organize and plan and try and recruit people to all of our events all of the time, there are some great strategies in here for how to make events awesome, why events are important, the finances behind them, how to differentiate yourself. So Rod is a perfect guest for us because at CIR, our culture is so important. And I think that you believe in that quite a bit as well, and that really comes through in your book. So what was your motivation for writing this book?
Well, I found that a lot of the professionals that I've worked with in my career, and perhaps people in your business, have found that it's such a competitive environment that they're in that they really need that point of differentiation, as you mentioned. And it's so difficult to find those things. We can't create new product. We can't create new purposes to work for, but one of the things we can work on fairly easily is the processes around what we do. So this was a strategy to help people improve their business.
Absolutely. So say we're speaking about events here. What is the primary reason that you would give a company, a corporation, or even an individual business person for having an awesome event?
A big important part of this is about relationship building.
Right.
What we're in competition for really at the end of the day is to initiate and maintain an awesome relationship. And that's easy to say, but it's hard to think of very meaningful ways of doing that.
Right.
A memorable event that follows certain principles or approaches certainly can build a long-term relationship and help with your practice or your business.
Absolutely. So I know from doing our events that events aren't cheap. They're actually doing a good event is really expensive. I know that we are very, very lucky to have the partners and the preferred suppliers like TD Canada Trust to make a lot of our events very possible. But to a lot of people, the expense behind an event can almost make it unmanageable. But I think that one of the arguments that you make in your book is you look at, is it frivolous? Is it expensive? And how do you justify the expense for something like this?
Well, first, I do want to point out a lot of the really excellent events are not expensive. I mean, certainly the people associated with CIR Realty are very lucky because you are building these systems for them. So they're very fortunate. And you guys really should take advantage of all of these as much as you possibly can. But a lot of the events that I've participated in have been fundraisers or corporate sponsors, as you point out, or, it's really about the memorable experience. And you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money for a memorable experience. I mean, ask yourself about some of the favorite dates you may have had in your life, and they're not always about spending a bunch of money, are they?
No, the last memorable date I had was absolutely not about that.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
May I speak to the idea of something being frivolous? It's really about measuring the results of your activity within your business. It's only frivolous if you don't know where you're supposed to be taking this event.
Right.
If you're measuring what your practice is doing and you get a sense of how it could improve, then you can measure the results after a strategy such as this.
Right. So one of the things you talk about is measuring your strategy behind that. It's a big thing that we've actually been trying to do. So I'm actually advice that we need from you is when we have a big event, how do you necessarily measure the results for that?
Well, that's actually a really good question.
Yeah.
For a lot of the folks, it's really about three measurables: retentions, referrals, and response. So retention of the relationship is something that we can measure. Are we more likely to have these people do business with us again in the future?
Right.
Response refers to a client or customer taking the advice that you're actually giving them. If you're making suggestions to a client in the course of your business and they're following that, then you can measure that as an improvement in your relationship. But the number one thing is referrals. We can measure referrals. People refer business to people that they like and they trust, but who they have a bit of a history with. And so those are measurables in this.
Very cool. So what are the main areas that people need to attend?
There's four primary components.
Okay.
The participants is one of these, and that goes far beyond your clients or your relationships. It could be your colleagues, it could be some of your corporate sponsors, certainly the friends and family of your clients.
Right.
Another key component is the venue-activity combination. For your upcoming Stampede event, you have a good venue, and I'm sure CIR is going to do some interesting things at the venue to make it more memorable.
Beer pong.
Beer pong could be one.
Just kidding.
I don't know. We'll find out if you go. Communication strategy, just building an event and having people participate are two different things. So
Right.
it's like marketing a product. You have to have multiple points of communication, which of course I outline in the book. And then finally is a component I call lasting memories. How do we take this event that could have been just frivolous and turn it into part of an ongoing history or relationship you have with the person? And there are certainly techniques on how to do that.
Could you give me one example? So one example would be, so say we have our Stampede party coming, and we're probably going to have about 900 people there, and I'm kind of the person who has to plan all of this. So what advice would you have for me to make sure that this is memorable and something that isn't frivolous?
Well, it's on short notice, and so you don't have a lot of time to do this, but one of the easiest things is pictures. But just a picture of anything is not in and of itself interesting. I mean, you know, the ability for us to take pictures with our iPhones and delete them mean that the value of a picture has really declined in our lifetime.
True.
If we can capture people doing something interesting, riding a bull, playing, well, maybe not doing anything too embarrassing, but something that captures a moment where they go, oh, wow, yeah, that was such a great time, I want to keep it. Even maybe delivering that picture in 3 dimensions instead of just electronically so it gets posted to the fridge. Another favorite strategy for me, and I don't want this to sound self-serving, it's really about books. A lot of the favorite events that I've planned and hosted have been a really compelling speaker. They have interesting books, they sign the book, they put their pictures in there. People keep books forever. You know, fewer people are writing these days because of all the other media available, but people do keep books.
I agree. We're actually having a big event on September 21st that we're getting some books for, and we're going to try and get those signed and delivered. So thank you so much. So I guess my last question for you would be, moving forward, general industry trends with client events, business events, what do you see happening? Any recommendations to our realtors who might be trying to host some of this stuff?
Sure, and yes, very specifically, tracking, say, the baby boomers as a demographic group, the next stage for them is going to be about legacy. So issues, legacy-related topics associated with events such as family genealogy or charitable giving, those kinds of things that remind the baby boomer that they'll be leaving something behind. That's going to be a big topic for them. Another thing has to do with travel-related activities. Some of the professionals that I've been tracking now for over 10 years, they have begun to do events that are about travel, about getting their clients on cruise ships. Or one of my favorites is a bunch of Italians that went to Little Italy in New York and then went to the island of the immigrants to find how their family arrived into New York, and they did this as a group. I mean, memorable life event for them. So
I think what
really
CIR
cool
needs to do is rent out a cruise ship and do a trip around the world and let everybody dock off at their country of origin, find their relatives, and have just a nice dinner. Ron and Ray, realtors, expect your monthly fees to increase.
You know, all seriously, folks, you know, some of my favorite trips that I've ever done as client events were on cruises, but guess what? The clients pay for it. And the imagination of your firm and of you people watching this is about giving them a compelling reason why they would want to pay for the trip. And that would be about adding something to it. And there's a lot of great ideas of doing that in the book.
Very cool. Thank you so much for being here. It was a lot of fun chatting with you. I appreciate it. If people wanted a copy of your book, is this sold anywhere or is it online?
Yes, it's on bookstores here. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's Rod Burylo, B-U-R-Y-L-O. And I can certainly make copies available to CIR. If they'd like to create a system to do that, we can talk about that offline.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. It was great having you.
Pleasure.
Okay, guys, we're going to take a little break, do a tech tip, and then we are going to have Russ Austin and Gary Macer come on and talk about some mortgage changes, the rules, the consequences. So we will see you very, very shortly. Hang tight.